And now we've already gotten the allotment for the regular program, and now we're going to get into the special allotments for students with special considerations, certain needs that they have. Just to kind of refresh your memory, in case it's been a little while, of how we got to the adjusted allotment. You start with the basic allotment. You apply the cost of education index, which would then, the result of that is the adjusted basic allotment. And if you're less than 5,000 regular program ADA, then the diseconomy scale formulas, the small and mid-size, are applied. But regardless, you end up with your adjusted allotment, and that's the number, that's the cash number you use in all of these formulas that we're going through. So there again, those are the 10 funding allotments for Tier 1, and the ones we're going to talk about today or in this session is compensatory education, bilingual education, gifted and talented, and public education grant. And we've chosen to put those four together because they have some commonalities in the way that they're calculated, so it makes it a lot easier to consider them all at one time. Now, there are three components to the formulas in each of these cases. One is the funding level, which is, in all of these categories, adjusted allotment. The second is a student count of some kind, and then the program weight for that particular category. And there's your formula. In all three cases, you just take your funding amount times the students times the weight, and that gives you the allotment for these areas. So if you look at a chart here that has the four allotments that we're going to handle, you'll see the funding level in all four cases is adjusted allotment. Now, the student counts, though, are different. The compensatory education, although it's used for students who are at risk of dropping out, that in actual fact, it's based upon the number of kids you have in free and reduced lunches in your district. And you have monthly counts that you submit to the agency. And of those monthly counts, you take the best 6, the highest 6 months, you divide by 6 to get your average count. That's the student count for compensatory education. Now, bilingual and PEG are just based on average daily attendance for the people that are in those programs. Gifted and talented is based upon the total refined average daily attendance at 5% or enrollment, whichever is less. And that's based upon the conception that truly gifted children make up no more than 5% of your community, your school community, but you may want to serve more than 5%. So in order to keep that from getting out of hand, they limit it to 5% of your total refined ADA. And for most districts, that's what you end up getting. So we go back to compensatory education, and here's a made-up chart that shows for each of the months. You'll notice it starts, this is for 2014-15, and it starts in October of the previous year. It's not current year counts. It starts in October of the previous year, which is your federal fiscal year, and it goes through September of the current year. And if you were to go through and start picking out which of those are the largest and pick out 6 of them, and there's 2441 would be one of them, and then you can go and pick out, here's 255, and you pick out the other 4, and there they are. Those are the 6 biggest ones. And so then you just take these and you add them together, and the total for adding those 6 together is 1,439, and you divide by 6 to get the average for these 6 best months, and that gives you that number, which is your comp ed count. These may or may not be the same kids that you serve. There is a correlation between kids who come from poverty situations and children who are at risk of dropping out, but it's not a close correlation. The valedictorian of your school might be one of the children that makes up this comp ed count. Now, just taking those 3 factors, We have an adjusted allotment that we've assumed of 6,000. We just calculated the best 6-month average of free and reduced lunch count kids, and there's the weight for Comp Ed at 0.2. You just multiply those three numbers together, and there's your allotment for your compensatory education. Now, there's also a compensatory education allotment for pregnant students. And it's not just based upon pregnant students. It's more than just being pregnant. You have to be receiving services for your condition. And in that case, the student count is pregnant student FTEs. Doesn't have anything to do with the free and reduced lunch counts. And the weight, as you can see, is much larger. But the time that they're involved in the program is not that much. And so the high weight does not really amount to a whole lot of money. So you take your adjusted allotment, you multiply it by your student count, and then by the weight, and that will give you your compensatory education funding for pregnant students. Bilingual is the same thing, except for the student count, you use bilingual ADA, average daily attendance of the students who are in the bilingual or ESL, English as a Second Language programs. And of course, the adjusted allotment's the same in every case. You'll notice that the weight for bilingual is only 0.1. Studies have been done to say that it should be closer to 0.4, which is the same for compensatory education. So it's very much underweighted compared to what studies have shown that it should be. And there's been several studies, so there's really no need to go back and do a study of either bilingual or Comp Ed. If anything above their current weights would be good, and going up to 0.4 as a maximum. So if we assume that 50 ADA were in your bilingual program, then you just multiply your adjusted allotment with 6,000 times the 50 ADA in bilingual times 0.1, and that would give you your allotment of $30,000 for the bilingual program. Public education grant, you remember public education grant is to encourage districts to accept children from other campuses in other districts that where more than half of the kids have failed the state tests, or the district over the past couple of years has been a low-performing district. And so as an incentive to the receiving district to take these students, and for some districts they like to have transfers because it gives them more kids and they get the state funding with those kids, as they do in this case. Other cases where they already have as many as they can handle on campuses or in their classrooms, and just having a few kids transfer in can result in having to have another teacher and can be quite costly. But to PEG ADA, and what I've used there is just, let's say that you had 3 kids come into your district to get away from the campus they were on, and say that they were in attendance 95% of the time. Well, that would amount to 2.85 ADA, 95% of 3 children. And multiply your adjusted allotment times the 2.85 ADA in our example, and multiply it by the weight, which is the same as for bilingual, and you can see the allotment is really not going to be a lot of money. As a matter of fact, the most recent numbers for 13-14 from TEA show that the amount of money is around $1.1 million, so not a whole lot of kids. The gifted and talented student count, you remember that there's a cap on it. It's the number of students that are enrolled in gifted and talented, not your ADA. But it cannot be more than 5% of your district's total refined ADA. And in our illustration here, we're assuming that that's 1,000. So 5% of 1,000 is 50. So you take the lesser of the students you have enrolled and this cap of 50. In this case, you would get credit for having 50 kids because that's the smaller of those two numbers. And once you've arrived at that student count, it's the same as in the other cases. Adjusted allotment, student count, and funding weight. So for gifted and talented, you'd have $36,000 for that allotment. And that's all there is to it.